What does the word cheating mean to you? Is it infidelity? Copying someone else's answers on a test? Stealing fake money from the bank in Monopoly? But in sports and hockey, cheating has somehow become synonymous with trying. From illegal equipment, banned players, to a scandal that involved international espionage for a team just looking for scoring help, we have it all. And however you define it, everyone has done it. Every NHL team's most cheatingest moments are coming up right after this. Real quick, these are ranked from least cheatingest to most cheatingest. I do give preference to off-ice scandals and systemic cheating versus on-ice stuff, unless it's really clever. You'll see. Of course, using your resources to bump up the line to get a kidney is pretty awful, but most people in Ottawa would probably want Melnick's bunch to cheat on the ice for once. Jason Spezza tried that in 2009 when he got caught with a stick more curved than the COVID case count in Florida. His stick was confiscated. Hey, there is a code in the NHL and it usually says that once the fight is over, that's it. Unless you're Gordie Dwyer, who in an exhibition game in 2000 left the penalty box after a fight with two Capitals, then attacked them and pretty much anyone else around them, including the refs. Dwyer was suspended 23 games for not being able to accept his timeout. The Bruins have had a violent history, from Eddie Shore almost losing an ear at the hands of his teammate to Mike Milbury thinking he was disciplining his children with a chancla, but none of these were as bad as an incident which ended in criminal charges. That's what happened when Marty McSorley hit Donald Brashear in the face with a stick so badly that the cops had to be called. I mean, hitting a guy is one thing, but trying to 6-foot him under the pond with your twig is another. Recently, a harsh reality surfaced that in 2016, former Canes coach Bill Peters allegedly kicked and punched his own players, including Michael Jordan. Not that MJ. GM Ron Francis denied he knew anything about the abuse and gave Peters an extension in the time period the incidents were allegedly happening. More on this story later. Players abusing substances in the NHL isn't as prevalent as, say, the MLB or in Mike Richards' house, but it is news when a player gets popped for performance enhancers, like former #1 overall pick Brian Berard did in 2006. He was issued a 2-year international ban and didn't miss an NHL game. Weak. Check out Kevin Fiala flipping Anthony Botetto's stick to him. Cool, right? Also illegal. The rules are clear. When you lose your stick, either go back and get yours or go get a new one from the bench. So for as satisfyingly sweet as that was, it should have been called a penalty. Hey, is stealing an entire NHL team a crime? You have to go back in Jets history to when they were down south and a young Ilya Kovalchuk got popped with an illegal stick in 2008. I guess he got the last laugh because he got out of the box and immediately scored. Cheaters do win. Already shorthanded, late in the third period in a rivalry game in 2012, the Kings were on a break until Ryan Clough took a swipe at the puck from the bench and broke up the rush. Yeah, he wasn't coming onto the ice early. He literally swiped at it from the bench. And he received neither a penalty nor a suspension for this. Come on, Stripes, that's cheating. One of the best debuts in the league ever may have been helped with good old steroids and a rigged expansion draft. In 2018, Nate Eat Schmidt was popped for a 20-game suspension and denied the allegations of having a PED in his system, but he served the suspension anyways. 13 months later, teammate Valentin Zykov got a 20-game ban for the exact same violation. Whoopsie! Some cheating is nasty and some is outright clever. It's been long speculated with anecdotal evidence that the boards at Joe Louis during the 90s and 2000s were extra springy so the players could get better bounces, and I guess that's helpful when you're playing the weak side lock. What is confirmed is in 1996 and 1997, Scotty Bowman would have the visiting locker room painted before games during playoff series, giving off a pungent, distracting odor. I smell what you did there. Former coach Roger Nielsen would probably use AI defenders in NHL 20 and run a 1-3-1 because he was known to pull off bitch moves, like having players come on the ice early to break up potential scoring plays, gladly taking a penalty to slow things down in the waning seconds. He would also put in a defenseman in net versus a goaltender on penalty shots, and instead of trying to go 1v1 in the net, they would just rush the shooter. That's actually pretty funny. And finally, when he pulled his goalie late, he would have them leave their stick in front of the net to potentially break up a shot. Alright, I like this guy. Stealing your fans' hopes and dreams for 50 plus years is not illegal. However, in the 60s, Carl Brewer would cut out the palms of his gloves so he could get a better grip on the stick, something we can all empathize with during this lockdown. The number one rule to how mafia works is not ratting out your friends or yourself. In 2011, Patrick Elias committed a high stick, but the refs assigned the penalty to Peter Sikora, who served the rap. Elias stayed on the ice and promptly scored a shorthanded goal. Clever bastard. Good old Sean Avery, antagonizer, sloppy firster, bike lane warrior. He was also such an asshole they had to change a rule because of it. In 2008, Avery decided that instead of just camping in front of Marty Brodeur, he would wave his stick and be a shitty beekeeper to get under his skin. And it worked, with him scoring later on the play. Afterwards, the NHL changed the rules so that you can't obstruct a goalie in that manner, though farting in the crease is probably legal. In the 90s, as the era of the flopping goaltender came to an end, the NHL put in new specs for pads, blockers, and gloves. However, they did not have rules on chest protectors, and Gar Snow would put on one so large he looked like a big Hero 6 in the net, or a walrus. Take your pick. Eventually, new specs for chest protectors were issued. In the early 2000s, cancel culture did not exist. Otherwise, Billy Tibbets would have never played an NHL game. After doing 39 months in prison time for sexual assault on a minor and other charges, he played in the NHL from 2001 to 2003. However, as a convicted sex offender, he was not allowed to even go to Canada to play games. Could you imagine that happening today? Recently, Evgeny Kuznetsov got in trouble for an illegal piece of equipment. I believe it was a straw. If you think being quarantined with your family is bad, try being a visitor to the Avalanche, which shortened the opposition bench, making things crowded and uncomfortable. The Red Wings were clever enough to bring their own bench extension. I cannot think of any good examples of the Dallas Stars taking advantage of a rule that greatly benefited them. Remember Bill Peters and his allegations of abuse? Turns out he's also a racist. Last year, reports surfaced of him using racial slurs at Rockford IceHogs player Akim Aliu, and those previous allegations about the GOAT, MJ. Peters resigned and was promptly canceled. Hey, I don't know if having a giant sign in a Chinese theater is grounds for cheating, but they were certainly influential in the Kings stealing away the greatest player ever from the Edmonton Oilers. Because his hot-ass wife Janet Jones both wanted more roles in movies and Wayne to be in a bigger market, Hollywood purely existing is what swayed the Oilers to trade the Great One to Tinseltown. That's a reach, but I know it was weak. I'll just mention anytime they try and reactivate Slava Voinov. I guess being a twin lends you to superpowers. Apparently the Sedins used their grade school tactic of taking tests for each other in the NHL, as sometimes Henrik would get thrown out of a face-off only to be replaced with his twin brother, Henrik, disguised as Daniel. You get it. Original 6-team old school cheating from 1968 to 1969, nice. The Habs timekeeper took bribes to manipulate the clock on prop bets, where people laid action on whether the goal was scored on an even or odd second, where he would run extra game clock in order to get the right outcome. What a piece of shit. What's the best way to have sex with a prostitute? On credit, baby, on credit. And that's how John Spano bought the Isles in 1996. Somehow, the league was so desperate to get that team sold, they overlooked his purchasing application or didn't ask for references. He claimed he was worth $230 million, he was only worth $5. He owed back taxes and was basically lying his ass off. It was revealed he was a swindler, was arrested for wire fraud, and did time. He did fire Mike Milbury, though, only as coach. You heard of crotchless panties? Well, Tony Esposito constructed whatever the opposite of that is, sewing some kind of mesh contraption between his legs to help clog up his 5-hole. Those Puritans love him. Back to shady business dealings, as former stakeholder in the Predators, William DiBiagio defrauded the team and eventually went to prison for lying to investors. He used some of the stolen money to buy a $25 million stake in the Preds. I wonder how many Subban dives that got him. Okay, prison, assault. Only thing left to get me a yellow dot is a murder plot? Well, former St. Louis Blue Mike Danton was plotting on what was likely his dad, who allegedly abused him. Danton was arrested just hours after he participated in a playoff game. Apparently, him and his girlfriend tried to hire a hitman, Joe Exotic style, who turned out to be an FBI agent. Danton did 5 years in jail. Should have talked to Carol Baskin. Hear no evil, see no evil. As long as you don't get caught, like when Ryan Getzlaf casually removed a goal-scoring puck from the net and stuffed it in his britches. Then he had the balls to deny he did it.
You might have closed your hand on the puck, I don't know if you did or not. Oh, it was me for sure, it might have been somebody else.
Speak no evil. If you think Daryl Katz is slimy for bilking the city into buying a giant metal quote bubble, meet Peter Pocklington, the man who merged the WHA into the NHL but then later would file for bankruptcy and be placed under house arrest, and is also in the midst of a securities fraud claim in Arizona. He also tried to sneak his dad's name on the Stanley Cup, which has since been erased off the pewter. Rick Tocchet is a gambling man. Well, he likes to run gambling rings, which he did as an assistant coach for the Yotes in 2007. I guess gambling isn't a big deal to the NHL, as Tocchet is now the Coyotes coach 10 years later. Also, a leopard can't change its spots. The Yotes were accused of tampering with draft picks in 2020. Before we get into the number 1 most cheatingest moment, and it is good, let's bring in the Seattle whatever they are called. Apparently they will be naming themselves the Kraken. Though they have been approved as a franchise for over 2 years, they have intentionally not named their team in what seems to be an overdrawn marketing ploy. Personally, I think they should be called the Rain City Bitch Pigeons. And now for the number 1 most cheatingest moment. None of these NHL scandals involved international espionage and meddling in the Cold War, but this one did. In 1988, the Sabres decided to draft Russian superstar Alexander Mogilny, even though as a member of the Russian army team and archenemy to freedom, he was not permitted to play in the US. Having met Mogilny in Alaska a year prior at the World Juniors, Sabres exec Don Luce had a plan to extract his potential star 4 months later at the Worlds in Sweden. After the Russian team won the tournament, they were given a day off. Sabres GM Jerry Meehan met Mogilny at a shopping mall, with him running to their car as they were being chased by Soviet agents. They laid low in the Swedish countryside for days until finally getting clearance to enter the US. The USSR was really pissed about this, but 6 months later the Berlin Wall came down and Mogilny would already be playing in the NHL. And he was a stud, scoring 76 goals in his 4th season, not being killed by the Russian mafia. Damn, Buffalo had to go all Mission Impossible just to get some goals. Well, there you have it. Murder, espionage, curved sticks. Who knew the NHL was so full of cheating? I hope you enjoyed this. Please do not forget to subscribe for more sports facts and bad jokes. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.